Yo, welcome back to my channel. My name is Iman Jabara, and I am here to help you learn how to scale your business from 7 to 8 figures through operations, sales, and retention. So for today's video, I'm going to be going over the recruitment process. Basically, I'm constantly getting questions asking me, when should I hire my first employee? How should I hire them? What's the interview process looking like? When does it make sense to add specific parts of the company like sales, operations? So I just built out this whole entire SOP that goes over everything step by step. Super easy to follow, and let's dive in. Okay, so a couple of key points you have to really focus on when it comes to hiring is just like you're interviewing the individuals, they're interviewing you as well. The best talent is going to go where their biggest dreams are met. And what I mean by that is the vision needs to be big enough for them to also fulfill their dreams. If you can create a system where you can help somebody hit their goals, then they will automatically, in a sense, also help you hit your goals. Because you have to look at it from a perspective of how can you mutually be beneficial to each other. I think a lot of employers nowadays, they just kind of focus on what they can get from the employees compared to what they can also give. Ideally, this has been one of the big things for me that's made me successful in the career is I always try to find what the employee's buying motivator is, and I align all of the massive decisions around their trajectory of their growth around their goals. In other words, I try to give them the skills and I try to develop the skills and talents they need to hit their goals, which has been very, very helpful for me, and it allows me to maintain a lot of my employees so they don't really leave. They stay with me long term. Also, second key point is like the more valuable the skill, the more it's going to cost. So if you want somebody that's coming in with a set of skills that you are going to need, then get ready to shell up. And this usually hits home for a lot of beginner entrepreneurs because they want the savage closer. But the reality is their opportunity isn't good enough to get them the savage closer. Or they want the client success director that's phenomenal at what he does. But again, the pay isn't going to make sense for them because maybe your company isn't at that level yet. So initially, I would say get individuals that you can mold and help grow, and that's where your leadership really has to shine. And then as you get bigger and you have more resources, then you can start outsourcing specific things. Number 3, replacing the skills that will cost the least amount of money should be the first thing you should do. And what I mean by that is slowly but surely delegate yourself. And I'm going to go over this a little bit more in the process. But basically, don't try to delegate the things that are the most difficult. In my opinion, try to understand and learn those processes early on so it saves you a lot of trouble later on in the process. And one last thing that I also like adding is like putting a secret objective in the application because you can see if somebody's actually reading and detail oriented. But these are just like small things. Okay, so let's start from the beginning. Okay. So the way I look at it is like there's 4 levels of business owners. There's the operator, which is basically you're doing it. It's everything kind of like you're managing the whole entire project. You're managing the company. You're doing everything on your own. Second level is manager. This is where now you are managing people to do it for you. And this is now where you just basically give them like small tasks. They get them done. It's very simple. It's very straightforward. Then the third level is CEO. This is where you manage the managers. And this is where now you have to now start developing leadership skills because the hardest part about being an entrepreneur is being able to develop leaders. The quicker you are at developing leaders, the more successful you will be because the individuals you're developing can think for themselves. And ideally, that's so valuable for you to have in your employees. If your employees can think for themselves, now they're not relying on you to consistently give the final call before they make decisions. And it works really well because you can move things really, really fast. And also they can come up to you with ideas that can help you scale the company at a faster rate. Fourth level is owner. This is where you oversee the whole company and this is where you can sell. But ideally, one of the biggest lessons I ever got when I was starting off early in my career was I'll never forget, I built my first 7-figure department within a company and I was super excited. I was super cocky. I was basically bragging. And I went to one of my mentors at the time and she came to me and she told me I wanted her to give me praise. I wanted her to tell me how great I was for being able to build this 7-figure company. And she looked at me and she said, so let's say hypothetically speaking, you got hit by a bus tomorrow. What would happen to the company? And I said, well, obviously it would like fall in shambles. And she said, and you're proud of that? She's like, you're proud that you just built a life. And that cut deep. That cut my soul. And what hurt so much was the fact that in my head, I've been so selfish and I'm just making it about me, 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 when I really forgot about everybody else around me and how I could help them hit their goals because I was so focused on hitting my own goals. And I also realized that the company needed me to run, which in a sense makes your company not that valuable. It does become a liability because if your company is dependent on you, then you'll never be able to sell and you'll never be able to leave it because it's always going to be revolving around you. And ever since that moment, I started every opportunity I went into, I started looking at it from a perspective of how can I leave this opportunity as fast as possible? How can I delegate my role to individuals in the first 3 months? So in other words, you eat a lot of, like, I don't want to use the words because we're on YouTube, but like you eat a lot of crap in the beginning and basically create the systems and SOPs to help your team win or give them the right tools to win. And ideally, that's what you want to get to. You want to get to owner. But owner, it's going to take a while, especially if you're just starting off right now. So the trajectory of a company growth, the way I see it is when you're like at the 0 to 1 million, that's like the promotion phase. That's where you're like undervaluing labor. You train them because you most likely can't afford the best talent. This is where you really have to pour into your people and you really got to build leaders. And I think if you do this the right way, you can actually create some savage A players. So that's that. Then you have the 1 million to 10 million. And that's where like now it's more of like product, where now you're hiring people with some level of skill. They're not the best, but they're definitely up there. This is where now your funds can bring new individuals into your company. It's solid, but again, there's still the third and highest level, which is the 10 million to 100 million. And this is where now you're focusing on the savage people. And this is where you trade people out of jobs and you get them into your company. So what I mean by that is this is when you start poaching. This is when you start looking at the best companies and who their best players are and you bring them on board. Because usually now their mind is now, I saw this, it's funny because I don't know if any of you have heard of Ryan Serhant, but in his show Owning Manhattan, one of the big things he did initially was he was playing defensive and he basically didn't want to ruffle the feathers. And he realized that in order to get to that next level or be one of the top real estate brokers in the world, he had to ruffle feathers and he had to go get the superstars from other teams. And this is what all sports teams do. Sports teams try to steal other top players from other teams because they want to take their team to the next level, whether it's company, whether it's you're a nonprofit, whether it's like a hedge fund, whatever it is. You constantly want to find the best people to add them to your ecosystem. And in doing so, you increase the standard, but you also get their experience and ideas that you can now add onto your company and, scale to the next level. So now that we've understood kind of like where you should be at and depending on where you're at financially, what you should be focused on hiring or recruiting, now we can focus on our next steps. What are you hiring for? Ideally, when you're hiring, the most important things you should really hire for is, number one, intelligence. Someone who can solve your problem. You're really bringing on somebody that is going to basically solve something that you haven't been able to solve yourself. Or if you have been able to solve it, you're going to find somebody to come in and solve that problem. So now you can focus on another problem to solve. So ideally, you want to find somebody that can solve or has a solution to your problem. Number two, work ethic. Speed of work ethic. You want somebody that's hungry. You want somebody that's going to work for you behind your back. You want somebody that's going to show up consistently and that is reliable. One of the big things I've noticed in my career is when people respond fast to text messages and your questions, that's a very good sign of good work ethic because they're focused on their role and they're on the clock. If somebody's responding 2 to 3 hours late, it's a red flag for me. And ideally, that's not somebody I want to work with in the company because success loves speed. And if you are going slow, not sexy. And usually that's for me, if that's one of the big things, especially in the hiring process early on, if I'm sending you emails and you're taking a day or two to respond to like the interviews and when you're going to show up to the interview and all these small little things, it's already a red flag. So you've already kind of lost the process. You've already lost in my head because what people don't realize is the interview process starts as soon as you submit your application. Everything there is then should be monitored. So that's that. Also, character. Integrity is big. Honesty is big. I had a guy just interviewed literally today. One of the big things he said to me, I asked him what his biggest weakness was, which is interesting because I always ask what the biggest weakness, and everyone is always surprised this question is going to come up. And what's weird is like, this is like, it's a one-on-one question. And I try to make it as simple as possible. So he hit me with, he's a car salesman and he felt bad because he's like, sometimes I won't be the top performer, because I don't want to screw people over. So I won't get them the upsells that they need, because I know they don't really need them. But I know that if I got those upsells, I would make one, more money, but also I would be higher on the totem pole. And he said, I know that's a weakness, and I know like you have to be hungry in sales. And honestly, like he might have said that as a weakness, but I actually really liked it, because right now I own a Medicare brokerage. And one of the big things we look for is integrity. And we want to help these individuals actually, like these old, retired, well, these senior citizens, I want them to actually have like good healthcare. And I don't want them to just get the sales specifically because they want to get the sale. Like I want them to actually care about these individuals, because their life is in literally their hands, in my closer's hands. So him saying that was a big green flag, because it shows that he won't compromise his values or hurt people to get the money. So that was very solid for me. He might have thought that was like a really bad weakness, but what I was looking for, it was actually exactly what I needed. So that was good. And then also beliefs, habits, like how do they take care of themselves? I know this is gonna sound weird, but people usually that are like more, that have strong routines, that even something simple as like even like going to the gym, showing that you have good habits, eating healthy. If you just take care of yourself, if you show up well dressed, well put together, that speaks a lot. Also, like your mindset. Are you positive? If I ask you about your previous employer, are you just shitting on them? Oh, excuse me. Are you just like talking badly about them, or are you actually like trying to explain your situation from their perspective and yours? Are you taking accountability? That for me is very attractive in a sales interview. If somebody is taking ownership, taking responsibility for their actions. Also, long-term perspective. Can they see a long-term vision? We don't want quick people that are going to be here for a couple of weeks or a couple of months. We want people that are going to be here for a couple of years. So it's like, do you see a trajectory of where you can be with us from year 1 to potentially year 3, year 4, year 5? Ideally, that's what's really going to move the needle, because I want to pour into people and I don't want to constantly keep hiring over and over again. So you have to look at the longevity of an individual. So when you're starting off and you're like building your business from scratch, the beginning thing that you really have to replace is this. So ideally, look at it first. The beginning, you're replacing your task from first to last, is you want to replace management first. And management is basically having somebody take over like the minute small things of basically telling people kind of what to do. And once you've gotten like the level of manager, then the next level is focusing on leadership. And leadership is basically now managing the managers. And it's like, how can these managers now build leaders? And I think this is the part where a lot of people really struggle in. I think management is pretty easy because it's pretty straightforward. You give somebody their roles, they know what to do, they get it done, amazing. But then when it comes to then holding them accountable and truly giving them the right tools to succeed at their job, that's where a lot of people struggle. A lot of companies don't really set the right expectations, and they don't actually give the employees the right tools. And what I mean by that is they might not have good onboarding processes. They might not have good systems that help track data. They might not have good SOPs or structures on how to do a specific role. They might not know how to help them solve problems on their own without the need of the CEO, because the CEO just kind of knows everything in their head and they can't now just put it on a piece of paper, or they can't teach to the other person. So then let's say, hypothetically speaking, this person comes in, the CEO has an idea of how he wants something or she wants something to be done. This person comes and doesn't do it that way. The CEO then gets mad at these individuals because they haven't done it that way, when in reality, the CEO never actually gave them the right guidelines on what to do to succeed. So they just said, hey, can you build this out for me? They didn't tell them exactly how to build it out. They didn't tell them when they wanted to build it out, and they didn't tell them the things that it needs to have inside of it. They just assumed that person is going to know how to do it. And that's where usually they shoot themselves in the foot, and that's where they get mad at their employees, who might have been a really good employee, but you weren't able to pull the best out of him because of your own lack of organization, but also structure to pour into. So extremely important to really think about, but this is where a lot of people lack. And then last but not least, and this is the part that you should really take your sweet time with, is the vision and innovation. When you give somebody enough power to basically be a decision maker within the company, you have to be sure that they are capable of handling that responsibility. And this is where somebody has basically been shadowing you, somebody's your right hand, somebody that knows how you think can then basically take the reins in specific parts of the company that you don't need to take the reign in. This is where now you can focus bigger on branding. This is why you'll see a lot of really successful companies. They'll have one individual who's really the face of the company, and then somebody who's on the operations, and he's really kind of, he or she's building out the systems, the processes. He's running the ship while the other person is getting the brand to be bigger and bigger. And they basically work together and they build massive empires. So that's very, very, very important. Then you also you want to go for them predictability. All right. So like when you're hiring people, really focus on a couple things. The resume has 3 times predictive power in the interview. The resume will tell you kind of everything you need to know about this individual hardworking. Do they have good experience? Do they have consistency? Do they have longevity? Are they staying with companies a little bit longer? Are they swapping from company to company, company to company? Like I said, the track record is the greatest predictor of their skills. If you look at their resume, are they consistently growing? Are their roles getting better and better? Are they getting better titles? Finding people who are a little better from where you are, but are not at the point where they forget how to operate where you're at. And that's kind of the gold. And what I mean by that is you want somebody who is good at what they do, not better, but good at what they do enough to then potentially take your role. So then you can move on to bigger and better things. Ideally, if you can find somebody who's equal and can take it quicker and you can trust them, that's great. But you don't want to hire somebody that's so far apart from you where then you have to retrain them through everything, unless you're hiring for a new role within the company that you don't know how to deal with. So like for instance, I think I'm a decent marketer. I think I'm better than the average marketer. But if I'm hiring marketing, I will hire somebody specifically better than me because I want to learn. I'm not going to do finance. I suck at finance. So I'm going to hire somebody to do my numbers. And I'm not going to sit there and try to learn the whole process and I can hire somebody because that's a waste of my time. And I could be focusing on developing other skills other than that specific skill. Same with marketing. Also, another big thing is how they deal with adversity. One of the questions I ask in my interviews is, what's one of the worst things that's happened to you? How did you deal with it? Or what's one of the toughest moments you've experienced in your life and how did you deal with it? And for these things, I'm really looking for somebody who has like been dealt like a really bad hand or something that something that was extremely difficult. And I want to see kind of how they think about the process. Are they being victims? Are they finding a way? Like, what's your problem solving process? That's really what I'm looking for. And also, were you able to take a step back and look at it and be grateful? Did this opportunity teach you how to become a better individual at your role, or did it just make you worse? So it's extremely important to look at these things because this is going to show you the longevity of the employee, but also how he's going to show up when shit gets hard. If things get tough and you don't have individuals that are going to hold it together, the foundation of your company is going to rumble. And if they fall, then everything on top of that also falls. So very, very important to look at this stuff. What should your first hires be? First one should be the individuals that take away things that you hate to do or you suck at doing. Things like admin, things that you just are just tedious small tasks, And what I think you should do, what you should do is should brain dump everything you do and see what you like and what you don't like. And when you do that, then you can look at the things that you don't like and see, all right, cool. Can I hire somebody for a specific price that makes sense for our P&L that can do the stuff so then I don't have to waste my time on this. So let's say that you were sending out this like long document and long onboarding system. And before like AI, you would have had to individually send everything through email manually before it was automated. So could you find a VA to potentially like get the list of leads and send out the lead gen or send out the onboarding process? Because if that's something you're doing, you're closing the sale, you're sending out the information, you're basically tracking them to see if they send you the money. All that stuff is tedious. Instead, you can literally hire somebody to basically potentially do the sale and then do all that other stuff as well. Well, now you can focus strictly on fulfillment instead of you focusing on every part of the process. And this is what happens a lot. A lot of these CEOs have like a lot of control issues where they don't trust that somebody could do their job better than them, when in reality, it's their fault because they have to teach the person how to do the job better than them so then they can get out of it and they can let them do that job for them. And just kind of trust. And also, like when you create that list, you also divide the things into strengths and weaknesses. The things that your strengths at, keep doing them. The things that your weaknesses at, hire somebody out. Like I would hire somebody for finances. I would hire somebody for marketing. That's not where I crush. But I'm really good at sales. I'm really good at retention. I'm really good at operations. That's my zone of genius. That's where I'm gonna focus on. And it's important to find the dollar amount of your weakness or your dislikes. And if something that you dislike is very expensive initially, I would say suck it up and do your best to learn the process enough until you're making enough money where you can delegate it. There are specific things that cost a lot more than others. Like I would say marketing, like I said, I'm a decent marketer because marketing is very, very expensive later on. If you struggle with marketing, it can really bite you in the butt. especially if you're spending money on ads, you're spending money on leads. If you don't do it the right way initially, it can be something that's be very detrimental. And that's where I say, like, go try to learn at least the bare minimum, or like learn some basic skills so you can start yourself off well. And maybe that could be, let's say, learning how to deal with organic, where now you're learning how to market without actually having to risk money on ads. And then once you've learned organic, then you could potentially test out a little bit of ads. Once you've gotten an understanding and you've made some money from the organic, you can then potentially hire somebody to do your marketing for you. So just be very creative and smart about how you deal with it so you don't really screw yourself long term. So that's that. The first 5 hires I always say should be like administrative role, like exactly like I said, something that's very like minimum, minute work that has to be done that you just don't want to do so you can focus on other things. So administrative role. Second should be the customer service or support. This is where you're basically focused on sales. I always say focus on sales initially because you're always going to be the one to sell your product better than anybody else. Once you've had a repeatable process and you validated the offer and you've made enough money where then you can hire somebody to replace you, then I would say really delegate yourself out of sales. But ideally, as you're focused on sales, you're going to get more fulfillment, and it's going to be really tough for you to do sales and fulfillment. That's why I say hire somebody to do customer service or support. And this applies for, like I said, maybe agency owners, consultants, agencies, marketing, AI companies, even SaaS. I've seen this happen in many SaaS products as well, brick and mortars as well. This applies to everything. Third, I would say after client success is salesperson. Hire this first or earlier if you're bad at sales. If you're bad at sales, I would say at least do a couple of sales calls so you can learn the process and get a couple of closes so you can train the salespeople. You don't want to be completely new to it, because if you don't know anything about the sales and you bring on somebody that learns the sales process and builds it out for you, it kind of shoots you in the foot later on if they end up leaving, because now the processes were all made by them. And now if they leave and you have to take over the sales team, you can't do the call reviews. You can't do the role plays. You can't do a lot of things to pour into the sales team because you don't know it. And then you're going to have to find a new sales agent or sales manager, or hire or promote one of the people that you already have, which I mean could be good, but it also could be a massive waste of time, and it could also like bite you in the butt, and you could lose a lot of money in the process. I've seen this happen in one of the companies that I've worked with. They were doing about, I think, 670. I mentioned this in my last video, and then they lost their sales manager. He took her whole entire sales team with them, and they went from like 670 to like, I think, 60 to like 70K. It was like 60 to 80K, between that range. They was a massive jump. And that was like 670 a month to like 60 to 80K a month is a massive jump by the next month. That's why I don't want you guys to get screwed. That's why you should know it and not depend on somebody having that big of a role, especially in sales. Sales and marketing are very, very big, where you should at least understand the data, the numbers, and you should be studying it as you're hiring these individuals so you're not completely screwed. Then I would say personal assistant, prospecting, videographer, intro call. These are like the things that make your fulfillment better. These are the things that also make your life easier in terms of getting leads. They're not necessary in the beginning because you can hire the first 3 people to do these things. But 4 is like the nice things to have. 5 is accountant, because at that point now you're making money. And now it's really important to get your numbers in check so you don't get screwed for IRS, so you don't get chased down by the FTC. It's extremely to have your books in check so you don't get like long-term screwed. And then last but not least, I would say tech, CRM, all that good stuff. You can build I built a 6-figure business without a CRM initially. I used the Google Sheet, if I'm being honest with you. It's not needed. I mean, people always want to like get it. They want to be sexy and get all this stuff done initially, but you don't really need this stuff. That stuff is good to be later on. If you've already built a successful business and you have the money, then sure, invest in that stuff early on, but you don't really need it. Okay, let's move on. When it comes to hiring, the red flags of hiring that you should really watch out for. Slow to respond, major red flag. Set expectation initially of how fast you want responses. I always tell people, I'm like, respond fast or respond within the hour. That's my only expectation. If it's anything more than that, that's a big red flag for me. If somebody is like, there's no good news about them, if like they've been on your team and everybody doesn't like them, people are kind of like already getting negative energy from them or talking about them and saying this is not a good culture fit, immediately you have to think about these individuals as potentially firing them quickly. And what I mean by that is there's not a good culture fit, because one weed in your garden could destroy the whole entire garden. And that's the last thing you want. You don't want those people that are super negative, that are constantly complaining, that are constantly making a big deal about everything that happens, and are constantly back, like being combative. That's one of the worst things you can do. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've had individuals like that have been hired at a company and I'll give them feedback, and they'll say, oh yeah, and they'll always give me an excuse. When in reality, I just want you to shut up and just listen to the feedback and then take it all in and be like, all right, cool. How can I improve? That's it. Because you want to know that the person is coachable and they can learn from you. Because if they come in and they're not coachable, it's not worth it. It's gonna be a massive pain in the ass for you to deal with it long term. Trust me, it'll be a headache. Then you have individuals that, like, if you're working from home, no camera off, their camera's off. I don't like that. Also, if they're taking calls from their car, massive red flag as well. For me, that's a really, really big thing. So if I'm on an interview and they're taking a call from their car, you're already disqualified in my head. Or you're not showing your camera, you're disqualified. If it's within the first couple of weeks, you're already calling in sick, disqualified. Unless something crazy happens or outlandish that, like something really bad, but it's a red flag if you're like calling sick within the first couple of months or the first month or so. Let's say that. Dress code. We usually have a very chill dress code at the companies that I work at, but have some respect. Don't come in with a tank top. Don't come shirtless, and you'd be surprised. Sometimes I had a guy come into the interview shirtless, which is wild. I respected the fact that he really thought it was okay. I'm like, that's wild. That's wild confidence. He didn't get the job, but it's crazy. I support it. And then also, if they suck at tech, if they're showing up to meetings late because they don't know how to use Zoom or Slack or Gmail, that's a massive, massive, massive red flag. And that's something I don't want in the company. I want them to know exactly what they're doing, or like at least they should have an understanding of tech, because again, you don't want to, your time is valuable and you don't want to sit there and like have to train again and again for the bare minimum or the basics. It's just not worth it. The 3 big tests that you should have all your new hires have are the big 5, and that's understandmyself.com, the DISC and value, how people show up to work, and the Colby, was how fast people pick up new skills. Get an assistant to follow the system. This is also very, very important because there's like personality tests. I use them from time to time. I use them more for my bigger hires. So like executives have to do this just because it helps me understand kind of how they operate and who they are as individuals. So then I can also give them the right tools. If they're more analytical, I know how to deal with them. If they're more personable, I know how to deal with them. It's extremely helpful to basically kind of vet who's showing up and how they're going to show up. And then in terms of like wanting to get people, these are the best places to get them. Bamboo HR connects all platforms. This will make your life a lot easier finding employees. You have LinkedIn, job recruiting sites, headhunters, Upwork, Fiverr, referrals, and reputable sources. This is my personal favorite. Referrals are the best because usually my top performers will give me people that are also top performers. And that's been most of my success. My best employees have been individuals that have been hired by friends that have been hired by employees that are actually like crushing it. They've been really, really good. Key points. Never hire friends and family or clients because they have a bias about you. All right. Use the interview as a learning process and ask them what they would do. Yeah. So basically what I would say is like never hire friends and family or clients because they have a bias on you. They already know you. And sometimes it's really hard to perceive you as different than the person they know. So a lot of my friends know me as funny, goofy, silly, you know what I mean? Guy who's always making jokes. But then in work, I'm a very different person. I'm more stoic. I'm more serious. I'm like, let's get shit done attitude. And I don't really like tolerate disrespect. I don't make as many jokes. I'm very kind of focused on work. But it throws people off because when they start working for me, they're like, oh, you're like a different person at work. I'm like, yeah, no shit. That's the whole point. We're supposed to be different because there's a version of you for every part of your life. And I think sometimes it's tough for your friends and family to see that side of you any other way, which is why I say it's very, very important that I just personally don't hire friends or family because I don't want to deal with it. Also, if they're not showing up and have to fire them, it's kind of a pain. Unless I've already seen them work and I know how they are and we've like worked together and not like a work professional basis and I see there's potential, maybe. We'll see. But for the most part, it's a no. This is one of the big things I would say is use the interview also as a learning process and ask them what they would do and what you can learn from them. And after they give you the stuff, then you have a list of ideas of what to do. So let's say that you're interviewing for a specific problem to be solved. I think this is actually brilliant. And you should ask the people you're hiring how they would solve your problem. And the reason why I say that is because when they solve your problem, you now have solutions to your problem. And if they say they don't want to give you that solution, then again, they're not the right fit. Because ideally, it's like if you have 5 people, they all give you 5 different solutions. You find the best solution out of those 5, and that's the person you want to hire. And they show you your skill set. And this will make sense when I go through the interview process of what you're going to have to go through with them on. But it's extremely important to utilize this to also for you to develop your learning, because they might also bring something to the table that you don't know. So in the time where you're actually interviewing 100 people, that time is still spent well, because you're still now developing potential solutions to the problem that you've already had. So I think it's an extremely important method to sometimes even help you find a solution. So yeah. So a couple of things of what interviewers should be looking for, again, is number one, they have the will and necessary to be the best. They have the skill that is necessary to meet expectation and KPIs. They're open-minded, coachable, excited to learn from you and grow. They demonstrate honesty and integrity with all their responses. They're certain in direction and they know what they want. They have natural rapport building skill, people skills. People skills are very, very important. And when I hire somebody, I'm always looking at, can I just go out and get a coffee with you? Can I have fun? Can we chill? Like, can we chill together on a non-working basis? And I think it's extremely important to know that, because it's like, think of like interviews like a date. Like, do I want to go on a second date with you or not? Is it important for me to, want to spend time with you? Because you're going to be spending a lot of time with them. And if you don't like them, it's going to suck. Like, a lot. Trust me. So really find people that you like and you want to connect with and you want to potentially grow with. They're able to explain why they left the previous position and why it's the right time for this position. Also, like, if they left their previous position, what happened? Were they laid off? Were they fired? Did the market just shift? Did they lose their job because now their role didn't exist anymore? Was it unfortunate, or were they the reason they left? And they speak about their previous employers. Are they being respectful? Are they saying negative things about them? Are they actually telling you the truth about why it didn't work out and what they could have done differently to make it better? All these things are extremely important to notice, because it shows a lot about the person's character and how they show up in life. Another big thing is like their income goals. Are they aligned with your goals? So for instance, like, if your job is hiring for $80,000, if they're telling you their income goal is $40,000, then that's a red flag, because it shows that they don't believe their value is $80,000 enough, or they don't believe their value is at the level where you want it to be. Because if you think the role is worth $80,000, but the person thinks it's $40,000, that means they have a lot of limiting beliefs and doubt, which sometimes can backfire on them. And this could be like this. You can kind of like play with this, because sometimes people just don't know the actual value of the role. And you might get lucky and get somebody for a cheaper price, but you really are going to have to pour into them and kind of help with a lot of mindset stuff around their growth. That's what I've seen in the past. When somebody really lowballs themselves, they usually have a lot of insecurities. Do they crush eventually? But you put on a lot of time in them. And if you really pour into them, they can do well. It's just a lot of time. And also you need to have the right leadership skills to do it. And not a lot of people, especially early on, have the leadership skills and the patience to really pour into somebody when they're already kind of stressed out about their business and having it grow. So that's that. And also you want to have the individuals that don't shoot the sky. Like, if you say $80,000 position, they're like, oh, I want to make $300K the first year. And I'm like, all right, relax. Because at that point now they're too overconfident, and now that person could come in with a massive ego, and it's just like, I just don't want to deal with that. So I'd rather set the expectation, unless it was a commission role and it was possible for them to make that money. But I would tell them on the interview that, hey, listen, you could make $300K, but you have to be the top of the top. And for that to happen, I've only seen that once. It's very, very difficult. But if you think you're that individual that can do it, amazing. I mean, don't threaten me with a good time. But just know that the role starts at this much, at like 60 or 80 or whatever. So for you to get to 300, you really have to outshine all the individuals that are already with this company and just be better than all of them. Very doable if you put in the work, but it's just difficult. So as long as I'm setting the right expectation and boundaries in the beginning. So once you've already gone this stuff, this is kind of like what you should do as an interviewer, what you should avoid, what you should really focus on, where to find them. So I hope this stuff helps. Now, the interview. How do you break down the interview? So I have interview framework in 3 phases. So basically, this is my framework. So usually the pre-interview is like a phone screen. Like I always say, have maybe a setter or like even yourself, just a quick 5 to 15 minutes, just kind of find out, like, are they crazy? Do they have a desire to be there? Do they have qualifications? Are they making time for the interview? Tonality, basically double check their resume, see if it's all true. This is just a pre-check. This is like if you're in a sales call, it's like a setter. You're just setting to see if they're qualified to be on the call. Okay. Then the first interview, I always say, should be the hiring manager for that department. So let's say the head of sales, the head of marketing, the head of HR if you're a bigger company, the head of fulfillment. The purpose of the first interview is to validate and confirm the history, experience, and qualifications and values. This is basically where you set the expectations for the roles and what the role entails and what the day-to-day looks like. Be very clear, concise, and specific on your needs because it's extremely important to set the standard on the first interview so there's no confusion in the second or third interview. This is where I usually ask, what's the toughest moment in your life? To try to get to see how they deal with adversity. This is just like the first date. Do I like you enough to want to see you again? Okay. So the first interview, again, don't overthink it too much. It's very straightforward. Just play with it like that. Second interview, usually the skill assessment interview. This is where you conduct with the hiring manager, again, or current employees. Like basically if like the top salesperson will come and maybe do a role play, or have the sales manager again come in there and do a role play, or somebody else. Ideally, I like having different people do all three interviews because you want to get three different personality types that are dealing with that individual and see how they deal with all those personality types. And if all three of my employees all like them, all like that person, then it's really good feedback for me. The second interview should be like basically the employee can assess the skill sometimes better than the manager, and they're doing the skill most of the time. So sometimes like if you have like a fulfillment, if somebody's in fulfillment and they're not a director of fulfillment, they have an employee that like can do the job better at that point, and so they're constantly in the role, so they'll see the traits the other person needs. I think it's important to switch it up a little bit. This is where you can ask them real life questions on what would happen in scenarios and find out what their skills are, what their weaknesses. Do you think it would make sense for them? This is where you can check past performances. Can they solve problems that you have? What problems have they solved in their past roles and careers? This is where you can also give them a problem to deal with in the first interview. Be like, your homework for the next interview is to figure the solution out for this, and how they went about it, what they needed to get done, what made sense. This is where now they send it back to you and you kind of go over it. You create an assignment for them, ask how they will solve specific problems. Basically, the whole point of this is just to really understand, are they good under pressure? Can they show up when they need to show up? And are they competent? Like, that's basically it. And then last but not least, the third interview is the gatekeeper interview. This is where basically you connecting with the CEO, or depending on the role, or somebody basically to keep the culture safe. This is basically where you assume the skill is there. You need to talk to them and see kind of where their values are and the vision aligns, because it's extremely important to see if their visions align to your culture, then it makes sense. But if you guys have very two different, like if they're very, very, very serious, if they're very chill and your company is very serious and very like to the point, then it wouldn't make sense. But ideally by this point, interview 1, interview 2, you should already kind of have a sense if they make sense for the culture. This is like just the last final check. Like you literally just have to show up and be a decent human being and you will get the job. So at this part, you're not really selling the job. You're just kind of giving them the reality. If you get this role, this is what's going to happen. This is what you're expected to do. This is what's expected to be done, etc. This is the truth of the environment, what you're getting yourself into. You try to scare them off because you kind of want to let them know, hey, this is going to be tougher than you think. But this can be very rewarding if you stick around. So make it very, very clear. And then like what's your best interest and what's in their best interest? Are they the best person for the company? So it's extremely important to kind of really focus on that as well. Just to make sure like, hey, they're a good vibe. It's a good culture check. In terms of interview questions for phase 1, I would say our big one for me is like, tell me what your last 2 years are like about yourself. Basically just let them ramble a little bit and kind of get to the point and tell you like, is their experience similar to what you have seen in the past to fit your role? And does it make sense? Does it like relate to the experience that you need for your role? Number 2 is, what's your biggest weakness? Instead of this, you can also say, I hate surprises. Can you tell me something that might go wrong now so I'm not surprised when it happens? This was by Simon Sinek. I saw it in one of his videos. I freaking love it. Great question. Number 3, I will say, is like, what stresses you out the most? You want to figure out how they deal under pressure. Number 4, describe one of the most difficult situations you have to overcome and what you learn from it. Number 5, describe the work environment they thrive in. And then number 6 is, how much do they initially want to be earning in the future? This is, again, you want to see kind of where they're at, what they've done, just kind of understand them. And then phase 2 is obviously like understanding exactly what they are, how good they are at their role. Yep. And now the main things to look for and consider is, during this process, what you want to do is you want to find out their true intentions, why they want the job. Do they want a different career? And are they doing this to get paid more? Or are they in for the long haul? Will they be here for short term? If the salary doesn't match, do they need a pay cut? Will they be incentivized to be here and actually work with us? That's kind of the main point of these interviews. Also, you really want to invest in infrastructures first and like systems to run. As these people grow, you want to have like a good basically structure for them to win. So it's really important to understand that, because you really want to give people the right tools to win in your company. Remember, if you don't give them the right tools and they fail, you can't blame them. That is completely on you. You are the issue. You are the problem. Number 3, it's not your job to make people happy. It's your job to give people an opportunity for them to, one, impact their life and hit their goals. But if they are not happy and they can't find fulfillment within the role, don't get mad at yourself and force them, because sometimes it just might not be the right fit for them. You want to find individuals that want to be at your company, that want to be there and support and like enjoy the culture. It's your responsibility to find people who fit in the culture. And that kind of goes to number 3. It's like, it's not your job to make them happy. Does the culture make them happy? Does it align with their values? And this is why I say the third phase interview is so important, because you want to find individuals that align with who your company is, with what the company is. Yeah. When you're hiring is solving a specific problem. Don't hire just to hire. Hire when you feel like there's a problem that could be done easier or more efficiently or faster to save you more time. So then you can either find new ways to scale your company or, move the needle forward. Pay top of market if you have the money to do so. Don't cheap out. Don't cheap out on paying your people, because if you have the right money, you will get some extremely good talent. And if they are incentivized well, they will stay with you long term. So don't shoot yourself in the foot. Don't be cheap. I see it so many times. Early on in my career, so many companies lost me because they cheaped out, and it ended up biting them in the butt, because some of the companies' departments got shut down and others literally lost massive amounts of revenue. And they tried getting me back after. I just was not interested because there was the lack of trust. The trust was broken. I pay for value. Profit is a need for a company to thrive, and keep your company out of water. You need to make profit, and also don't pay too much where it shoots you in the foot. Remember, again, you want to support the needs of your new employees, but you also don't want to compromise. Again, you built this company for freedom and to basically run your own show. Pay yourself. Focus on your needs as well. You can't really get the most out of your employees if you can't pour into your own cup. Pour into your cup before you pour into others. Trust me, it will go such a long way. You need to eat, and you need to be fully energized so you can pour into your people. Initially, like I said, if you have to, pay as little as possible to get the most profit. Initially. Because again, right now, you don't have the money to hire the top tier talent. Pay initially, and then you now have to focus on leadership and building them up to be the best version of themselves. Then once you have it, then you can start paying more. Number 10, teaching your employees how to work is so important, because a lot of individuals come in not knowing how to work, and it is your job to give them the right frameworks and mindset shifts they need, and also the tools to win. And the last but not least, finding good talent and training talent. Finding good talent and training talent, and then retaining talent. Finding good talent, training talent, and retaining talent. Sorry about that. That was crazy. It's your job to find good talent. It's your job to train good talent, and it's your job to retain good talent. And if you can do all 3 of this is when you build a successful 7 and 8 figure business. It's so much harder than you think. And even till this day, everybody will tell you they have the secret code to finding out who's a good employee. You don't. It's just with reputation, you start seeing patterns and habits in individuals that are going to crush. And some people shock you. Some people that you didn't think are going to do well usually are your best performers. And some people that you think are going to do phenomenal are usually your worst performers. So that's very, very big to really consider and look at. And then the last 4 are good turn. You let people go in the first 6 months. Okay? Bad turn, people have been there for years and they are then leaving. So in other words, you want to hire slow, fire fast. Because if somebody stays there a little bit longer than they should, then that's a weed. And now that potentially could cost you a lot of money that you could have made. And it could cost you a lot of potentially refunds and just overall a negative experience in your company. So you have to learn how to fire people very, very fast and see kind of what's working and what's not working, and realize, hey, it's okay. It's not it'll cost you a lot more to keep that person long term. And that's what I see a lot happen, where some owners are so afraid of firing their individuals. They have had people for 3 years that are just weeds, that have just been literally draining the company for so long. And if they fired them 3 years ago, they would have doubled their revenue. Because it's crazy, because after 3 years, they fire them, and then miraculously their revenue skyrockets. The culture increases, everything changes. And it's all because of one individual really screwed up the whole entire company. Which is crazy, because one person can do that, So be very careful about that. Also, like, really extremely important to consider when you're looking at this stuff is ask them how they can solve your problem. If they don't tell you, then next. And this kind of goes back to what I was saying in the beginning. If they don't want to give you the second interview phase 2, where they're basically give you the solution to that problem, then it just shows that it's going to be a bad fit. You know, they should be comfortable enough to give you the solutions. And if your solution is really, really good, then they'll hire you. And the people you hire, last but not least, are a representation of your company. Do not bring people that are going to make you look bad. Because again, remember, if your employees are acting out of line and are doing things that hurt your brand, again, they're the ones that are going to, let's say hypothetically speaking, you are the CEO of Facebook and one of your employees sends or writes a very offensive post. All right. That offensive post, who do you think the media is going to blame? Are they going to blame your employee or are they going to blame you? That's what happens usually in most companies. The CEO, usually the leader, is the one that takes the bullet. So be very, very careful who you hire because these are the individuals that are going to be either protecting you from bullets and you're going to be protecting them from bullets. So you don't want to be put in the line of fire consistently by these individuals. Remember, they make or break your brand. One bad seed could literally destroy everything you've worked 20 years to build. So be very, very cautious. I hope this helps. I try to give you guys as much value as possible. And if you guys have any questions, please put it in the comments below. Don't forget to share, like, subscribe. Again, I want to give as much value as possible. And I'm just giving you guys my full playbook. So if you have any questions, please, please, please reach out. Let me know. I want to support in any way I can. And I appreciate all y'all. Excited to keep building this journey with you guys. And if you need anything, message me.